Hi, I'm Megan, and we're here with the Credible Business Series with Virtually Incredible. This is Tim, and he is a property manager and running a property management company. How you doing, Tim?
Doing well. How you doing, Megan?
Doing good. Yeah. And Tim has not only worked in property management for the last 6 or 7 years, but he has also been on the vendor side of things. So he's worked in a painting company working for a management company. So he's got very niche experience when it comes to the topic that we're going to cover today. And the topic that we're covering is, what does a property manager look for when it comes to hiring a vendor, specifically a painter? What makes you want to work with a painting vendor? What is it that you're looking for? And the cool thing about working with a management company as a maintenance vendor of any sort, once you get a solid relationship with that company where there's a mutual understanding and a process set up where the management company enjoys working with you, it's a very steady stream of work. So it can really be a win-win. But we want to delve in today into what Tim looks for when he is trying to hire a painter for a property management company. And this one specifically manages single family townhomes, apartments, condos in Palm Beach County, Florida. And what makes you want to work with a painter and what it is that you kind of look for in your interviewing process. So I'll let you take it away. What's the first thing that you look for, Tim?
Well, yeah, off the bat, when I'm looking for a painter, quick communication. Somebody that has their processes set up in a way that on the initial phone call or email outreach, it's met with a prompt response, usually within 24 hours, and within that 1 day time frame, it would be ideal. So starting off with that, and from there, I gauge their ability to listen, because I'm going to call and say, hey, I have a property at 123 Main Street, and this is what it needs, and I need you to meet my standards and the expectations of the property, and I need a vendor and a painter who's able to listen and actually ask the right questions so we can meet our expectations together, versus a painter saying, oh, I know, I got you, and then I get a bill for a completely different scope of work than what the management company and our client need.
So communication, as far as good communication, and then also timing and communication, because as anyone that's worked in the property management field knows that, especially when a property is vacant, time is of the essence. And you are the person as the property manager communicating to the owner that, yes, your property is still vacant, and no, it's still not painted, or no, it's still not ready, which is money out of their pocket. So that's probably the number one, I would guess.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely.
So what are you looking for, though, specifically when you're looking for a painter? Are you wanting somebody that's, I would guess, more versatile? So like that they're not like, no, we only do full paints, we don't do touch-ups. That would be a huge no-go, correct?
Absolutely, yeah. Somebody who's flexible with whatever the property needs, from minor touch-ups or color changing one room from pink back to a neutral color.
Yeah.
Or if a property has been occupied for 7 or 10 years and it needs a full deal, like somebody flexible that can handle going in and doing a few minor touch-ups and it makes sense, to full-blown painting and conversion.
Yeah, and I've also I happen to have dabbled in the property management world as well, so I have a little bit of real life experience with that, and I know that nothing disqualifies a painter faster than them being unwilling to do the smaller jobs. They have to be willing to kind of do both, and they'll get the big jobs, but it's kind of like it's more of a looking at it in the grand scheme of things over a month or a week, and taking all of it. But if they're not willing to do the small stuff, that kind of puts you in a pinch, right?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, our whole goal here as a property manager is efficiency. So if I have to call this painter who only does full deal blowout, full paintings, but then they don't do anything smaller, and then I have a painter that only does smaller stuff but can't do the bigger stuff, I'm going to try and find that painter that can be my one call. So that way it's off of my to-do list for the day. It's set up, it's in motion, and we're servicing our client, versus having to talk to each painter. Then they got to view the property and say yay or nay based on the scope of work. So if a painter can be as flexible as possible with their scope of work and their minimums and maximums, it makes it easier on us as a property manager to want to send them over a work order.
Awesome. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. What else are your what kind of pain points or the things that you look for?
So we touched on consistency. That's huge. Billing, and once we get a job, billing and estimating. So the timeline to get an estimate is important. And I'll say it here: any property manager or any residential landlord is looking at a dollars per day cost. Average rent in the area is $3,000. That's every day the property sits vacant. That's $100 a day lost. So if it takes you 5 days to make contact and get me back an estimate, that's $500 lost while we're discussing a $1,500 estimate. So the faster an estimate can come back and get signed off on and approved, the more money that we're saving our clients. And that's everyone's goal here, is to minimize vacancy time, save our clients money. So being as quick as possible to get to a property and action it and shoot an estimate back will help you secure that, okay, now I have my estimate, and then we send it out to our client for approval. Or if it's within our scope, we can send out immediate approval, and then it's back of our ledger. It's back off of our to-do list, off of our ledger, so to speak, to get done. So being able to give quick, concise, simple estimates. I've worked with painters before that itemize everything down to the paint, how many gallons it is. Us as a property manager, I want to look at what's the scope of work, making sure we have similar scope of work, and what's the dollar amount. The labor, the paint, and all that, not as crucial as like a retail client. Sherwin-Williams and this sheen and paint, and how many gallons are you purchasing? What if I get it myself? Give me a simple, here's what we're estimating, here's what's included, or anything excluded. Like we're not doing ceilings, or we're not painting that one room because it's not needed. And give me a simple dollar amount that's an easy deliverable for me to send to my client or for us to review and approve.
Yeah, splitting hairs is not the way to go with that, as far as communicating to a client. Yeah. That makes sense. And yeah, we've had a lot of success with painters coming up with like a price per property square foot. So they say it's a 2,000 square foot home. They kind of, after we developed a relationship, they know what our painting standards are, paint is needed, and they figure it's 2,000 square foot home. They bill, $1.50 a square foot. And then we have a bit of a pricing that can be a bit more on a pricing schedule versus an a la carte. So we know what to expect when we get that quote back from a painter. And then from there, billing. So for a property manager, flexible billing terms. The more flexible you are within a 30-day billing cycle, the more a property manager is going to want to work with a painter, right? We get an invoice in, we get it, we process it. We typically pay our vendors within 7 days. But there's sometimes where we're doing a paint job on a property, and then we replace the hot water heater, and there might be a time period where there's not enough funds in the account for us to pay it out. And a vendor who would be like, "Oh, I need to get paid the same day I'm completed, and I'm going to follow up every day," like may not get as much work back from a property manager who's going to be not as flexible. So we usually say if you can be on a 30-day cyclical payable, that'll make you a lot more favorable to a property manager, because the last thing we need is a vendor following up on a payment that we mailed out, sent out, or are waiting for the owners to recontribute. From there, a good amount of flexibility with that, and there's obviously that mutual trust that's built. But yeah, I could see why that'd be important. There's a lot of spinning plates as a property manager, and you got to have a little bit of flexibility on that.
As far as scope of work goes, most of our painters started out as painters and then kind of expanded more into a handyman role. As a property manager, I want to make a one call, complete the handoff of here's everything that needs to be done with the property. As long as you're licensed and insured and capable of doing it, would like you to tackle that. And a lot of our turnovers are painting, blinds, maybe an odd toilet flush valve in a toilet, or a toilet seat, or doorknobs, real handyman style work. So anything that you as a painting contractor can include in that will make our lives as easy to give us a one and done. Here's you send one vendor out, get the property turned over, painted, repaired as fast as possible to eliminate the painter's done. Now let me call the handyman, get him out there for an estimate. He's 2 days delayed, and then we have like a bunch of buffer and gaps in the process. So I've found that a lot of our painters that we've hired started out as painters, and then just through the process have turned into handyman during the turnover, and it's saved us tons of downtime and added to their revenue where they've flexed into, I don't really hang blinds, but I'll do it for you, and then now it's a profit center for them as they've worked up to it, or hired another lower skilled labor to do that stuff just because of the volume of work that we give them.
So you just want it as a one-stop shop. Like it's very valuable to you to make one phone call with one person, pay one invoice and be done, rather than be delegating and managing multiple vendors entering the property while it's vacant, which makes a lot of sense.
Yep, exactly.
And then with pricing, where do you want them to come in with pricing? As a property manager, you are kind of presenting the estimates to the owner. So I know you kind of covered a little bit of this, but what is it that you're looking for? You said, don't split hairs on your invoices. It's better to do cost per square foot. But as far as where people fall with their pricing in the market and in the competition, do you want them to be the cheapest? Where do you stand with that?
Of course, every homeowner and every investor is going to say, I want the cheapest, and we've found that's just not sustainable. So we want the pricing to be, it's typically right in the middle of the road. So there's the boutique painters or the big conglomerates, the paint the world companies that typically come in, and they're probably 2 times as much as your middle of the road painter. Albeit you call, there's a central office, they have a billables, there's an estimator that'll get out there, but the pricing is just not sustainable for an investor, especially with a property manager who knows what things cost and what it should be. Also don't want to be the cheapest. I've found that working with the cheapest vendor that's racing to the bottom, I'll get whatever you tell me what the price is, I'll get there. I'll be the cheapest vendor for you. Oftentimes is not the most sustainable. They get burnt out, or we get used to the pricing and we sell it and we come to those agreements and it's not sustainable. Then we have to continually increase until they're priced out.
So competitive
1,000 square foot. Yeah, competitive pricing, not necessarily, again, every day that a property sits on the market, average eats $100 per day that it sits. So we want you in and out as fast as possible.
Right. So quality work, quickly, good communication, competitive pricing, not the cheapest, but competitive. The kind of pricing that you can sustain, do a good job. There's an opportunity for a relationship with a lot of work going to that specific vendor, because I think vendor management might be one of the biggest pains in the neck of property management. There's a lot up there, but when you find somebody that's good, you hold on. At least from what I've seen. Yeah. Yep. So when you find a vendor that's kind of, usually it sounds like the more smaller company type vendor that ends up working for you, do you ever find that there's issues in communicating with them when they start to get busier and you start to give them a lot more work? Like, do you have a hard time getting hold of them? Because there's a lot they have to do. They're in there. Sometimes it's a one-man band. They're in there painting. They got to keep up with their email, their estimates. They have to answer the phone when you call. Like, communication is such a big piece. What have you seen with that, with the vendors that have worked out for you long term?
Sure. Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. That's most of the vendors we end up working with are more of that mom and pop, smaller operations, because they're just the most cost effective and reasonable with the expectations. And yeah, as they start working with the property manager and it's going well, I'll start to give them more work, and they might get busier than what a one-man band or a partner team can handle. So the first thing that they start to look for is back office support. So they might hire an estimator or somebody who can help field the inquiries and estimates. I know a lot of people have turned to virtual assistants to help them with the back office support while the painters are in there painting and running the operations or estimating. They can help at least field our communications that, hey, we got your request. I'm going to send it over to so and so they can process it, and we're getting validated and heard on our needs. As the painters get busier than they thought, as a property management company floats them a lot of commercial business.
Yeah. Okay, that makes sense. So what you're saying is typically sometimes they have to hire somebody to help them with answering the phones, getting those estimates, because in order for the relationship to be sustainable, they need to be able to maintain the communication while either being a one-man band if they're a superhero, or get somebody that's going to be able to still get back to everybody timely, make sure that the estimates and invoices are organized. Because another thing I know from personal experience, and again, on this series, I may not be as well versed in some of the people that I interview, but I've worked in property management as well. If invoicing is not organized, it can be a nightmare. If there's confusion and they're needing a lot of help on our end to organize them, that can make the relationship start to feel not worth it. So the back office is very important, and sometimes I think help is necessary to scale somebody to keep them as a good fit.
Absolutely. Yep. Yeah, staying organized is as easy for the property manager as possible for payables, receivables, estimates, certainly. And also, as a painter gets busier, and if I were to call them and I don't get a response back that, hey, we got this, I'm going to call the next painter in my Rolodex, and you may lose that business. So you want to make sure that
to wait around. You're costing everyone money, and you're the one that's going to get the earful.
Yep. Absolutely, yeah. I'm on to the next person that's going to answer the phone or respond to my my maintenance request, my ticket, and say, hey, I got this. You're in good hands. I'll be to the property tomorrow.
Yep, got it. That makes a lot of sense. So Tim, in all that we've talked about, what do you think is the number one takeaway that people should hear from this? What is the most important part of building a relationship with the painter as a property manager?
Setting initial expectations from the start. Like I don't know how many times I've tested out a vendor on a property, and then I'm like, whoa, there was a gap here in what we discussed versus the product delivered or the invoicing on the backside of whoa, I didn't need all that. Or I show up to a property and I wanted the whole thing to be painted, and they touched it up when I have a client moving in the next day, and then it's a whole ordeal to get that corrected. So setting expectations from the very beginning, and property managers are good at this. Like, this is what we deal with day in and day out. But if a painter can or a vendor can meet you there and say, hey, what do you need from me? Give me some clear guidelines. What kind of painting are we talking about? What's the standard of finish? What's the level that we're getting up to? Are we doing a Taj Mahal, or are we doing a small efficiency? Like, what kind of painting do you need me to do for you? Starting asking those questions, me as a property manager, be like, whoa, a lot's alleviated off of my plate, because they're asking what do they need from me, instead of me just telling them, hoping they heard me, and then at the end of the day, hoping that right before tenants moving in, that we hit the mark together. So yeah. I'd say starting from there, asking the property manager, how do they want their properties? What kind of style, finish? What are the expectations? Clear, concise. Typically, I usually meet a painter at a property to go over it in person or do videos, but they can also be handled via phone. But that's where I'd say, if you wanted to earn a property manager's trust and then earn their business, starting with spending some time discussing expectations is the best place to start.
So very thorough on the uptick. Like, that's the time to talk it all through. Take your time. Don't overpromise and underdeliver. And if there's a question, ask it. Don't guess, because at the end of the day, once the job is done, you're relying on the property being move-in ready, or you're relying on, at least there will be situations where the painter's job is done and someone else is coming in, and you need to know that it's actually done, or it makes your job a lot harder. And I feel like taking that time on the front end is way more worth your time than taking the time on the back end to clean it up. You're unlikely to use that person again if it was just a simple communication issue. So you're never, I know one thing about you, you won't be annoyed with too many questions on the front end. You'd rather that be thorough.
Absolutely. Yeah, that'll get me excited about the opportunity to keep using a vendor and utilizing their services, versus me standing in the property on my phone saying, hey, you forgot to paint the inside of the front door, and the vendor says, oh, we never talked about that. You know?
Exactly. There's so much room for error if the right questions aren't asked, I think. So that makes a lot of sense. And thank you so much for your time, Tim. I feel like this is a very helpful kind of window into what a property manager is looking for, and how painting vendors specifically can fit that niche and hopefully develop great relationships with management companies, because it can be awesome if you can get on the same page. That's for sure.
Certainly, yeah. From coming from a previous painting experience, commercial clients are how a painting company becomes scalable, and you're not chasing residential paint jobs or chasing realtors that are inconsistent. Like a property manager can give you a consistent workflow that's done to a professional standard, not a retail standard that's, oh, you forgot to paint the underside of my windowsill the same color, or they follow around with the blue tape. Like getting the same expectation across makes a painting company that scalable and consistent, versus having to chase down your next job.
I would imagine that dealing with business owner to business owner rather than business owner to customer is really a perk too for a vendor that, a painting vendor. I personally would rather deal with one guy that I like, that's gonna make sure I get paid, as long as I make sure that I'm doing a good job for that guy, and so I feel like that's very consistent. One of the wild hairs of the industry when you're business to customer is dealing with every different kind of customer and temperament, hoping you're getting paid and hoping that person's good for the money and hoping. Whereas when you find a reliable management company and you can fit their needs, you've got one guy who fights for you, who fights for your estimates to be approved, who fights and says you have quality work and that this is the bid to go with, because they know, based on all the work you did in the front load and onboard them and get them, everyone getting on the same page, that they're going to do a good job. So I think that in the beginning, communication, building the relationship, asking questions, not guessing, don't overpromise, don't underdeliver. Also make sure that you're charging sustainable prices that are competitive. I think that's like the summary of all of it. Tim, thank you so much again for joining us and for all those insights. That's going to be very helpful. Where can anybody looking for a property management company in Palm Beach County find you if they're interested in using your services?
Great. Yeah, anytime, Megan. homepropertymanagement.com. We service Palm Beach County down here in beautiful South Florida. Anyone looking, I'd truly be able to want to help. I have a passion for helping the vendors get there from being both sides. So if anyone wants any help or guidance in the property management space, or from a vendor space who wants that style of consistent business, be happy to help. You can find me there, homepropertymanagement.com.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Tim, and you have a wonderful day, and I hope to talk to you soon.
You too. Thanks, Megan.